Everyone, it's been a minute. Long, way too long. And society aside, we have a lot to talk about. And an explanation is why I keep stopping, and I apologize. If you've hung around, I have no idea what to tell you, but thank you so much for being patient. And if they've left, I don't blame you. I'm freaking ghosted. I'm not here to make excuses or anything of the sort, honestly. Just to explain somewhat briefly what's been going on in my head and that there will be changes. Not that my channel has been really established to have that many changes, but here we are. But first, let's start with what's been going on. If I was to summarize it in one line and you want to click off, here it is. I have been relearning myself and consuming far too much isekai-themed media, which in turn, truth be told, helped and hindered me. Let me explain. By partaking of too much isekai content, I started thinking and fell down a well of study, which led to a complete rediscovery of who I thought I was. But why did I think I was that? I'll get into that. My earliest videos was playing around. My newer videos, relatively speaking, are me trying to craft a channel like the professionals suggest. But none of it was working. It just didn't feel right. I was awkward. You can see it in the camera. Everything was weird. For those of you who don't know, I actually come from a radio background. Seeing my face was a very awkward thing, and editing videos, I had to, and still to a certain extent, have to get over it, because I am hypercritical of that. And I'm working on that part. Still gotta work on that. But I was partaking of isekai content because I love it in almost all its forms. And it started making me ask questions as to why I was trying to present myself as a certain way. And then I realized that it was those ways that I was rewarded for as a child in school and various places for being so either well-spoken, if you know, articulate, those type of things. And I subconsciously internalized that. And I wasn't allowing myself to be human. I always had to be perfect, because I've always been the subject of hypercriticism, within and without, and I internalized that. I was crafted by society, family, and culture, and I was unlearning a lot of stuff. And I wasn't even able to truly be who I was around some family and friends. It's most especially then because sometimes they're your worst critics. So let's get into what isekai had me realize. Okay, let's summarize isekai. MC goes to another world, finds out they have a great talent, or that they're useful, or that they were the chosen one, and they are there to do a chosen job. They are needed, or at the very least appreciated, and find a family that they join. Right? Sounds about right. And that the version of them that was in our world or the other world was suppressed and underappreciated. Kind of like the general theme, right? Cool. And a lot of them were faking it until they made it, even though that wasn't who they really were. A nice reverse on that take is actually Sonya the Evil, where he wasn't allowed to fully achieve his potential until he went to another world, but that's a whole nother video, and I'm not getting into that. As someone who usually sees through the fake it till you make it as well, I wasn't about to do that in the videos to you guys, so I chose not to do that. The underlying theme of the Iseki Anime made me pause, and it was to find a community of like-minded people, or at least people who appreciate you for you and what you bring to the table. And isn't that all what YouTube really is? I was looking at it wrong. I was looking at how the pros told me to look at it, and that was not helping me. So I decided to take a step back and spend that time deconstructing and slowly but steadily throwing out the limits I had unconsciously allowed to be placed upon myself, and just explore me in her truest form. I'm finally to the point where I think I have a pretty good grasp of it, or at least 70% of it, and I feel more comfortable about picking up the channel again, though with obviously predictable changes. Let me just say that it is still going to be about me looking closely at all things geeky, anime, manga, video games, etc., and I'd be happy to talk about how things work, but more and more I want to talk about what those various forms of media have caused me to think about, what life lessons I've learned that I feel like people are sometimes often overlooking, It is fun to sometimes just turn off your brain and veg, and honestly, our society keeps us thinking about stupid stuff. And I personally do not believe that fiction is stupid. Fiction is a reflection of our reality. But I'll get into that. Basically, the channel was like the way I connect the dots of my own life while watching a show or playing a game. Fiction is not just a means of entertainment, because creating fiction is a form of art, and art is something that comes from the thoughts, the views, and understanding of the creator. It can showcase the artist's bias, their ignorance, their genius, and their failings. Those things can be magnified, fixed, or even disregarded when another artist steps into the scene to create a work of art based upon the original. Kind of like how sometimes people can create a version of you in their head even though they completely miss out on some of your most valuable and underappreciated aspects. People are painting versions of you in their head without truly knowing the subject matter. See how this is trying to come in a circle again? Art throughout history in all its form has been used as a means of self-expression, but also as a means of instruction, propaganda, and yes, indoctrination. My goal isn't to just teach and regurgitate what a writer has said in an interview. It's to see how these things all link and how they can edify the consumer when viewed thoughtfully. We can always learn from each other, even if it's to learn what not to do. I learned during this time that I cannot limit myself or my presentation, because I am a person of diverse interests, and attempting to synthesize them the way is commonly taught just wasn't working. I needed to just be me. Once I dug her out under all the limiting lies and nurture that I had unconsciously adopted. So these earlier on videos may be a little less edited because I need to get product out. I have to get the habit back in. Also, I don't claim to be an expert, but rather a fan who has a really hard time shutting off her brain when she's watching something. And I would like to share the way that my brain connects dots. Maybe it's interesting, maybe it's not. That's okay. This is more of a personal documentation if that's the case. Fine. Some things that don't seem to connect will make perfect sense to me, and I have to explain that. And maybe create a community of other people who are kind of like me, kind of weird, kind of awkward, and we think about the same things. And people are like, man, you think too much into it. But the reality is that everything that looks simple is actually a lot more complex than we give it credit for. And that includes entertainment. That's what Moderately Classy was always supposed to be about. And it took a lot of self-work to figure that out. So expect art to change, recording style to change. This one is a recording test of this style. So if you're the type who is curious or consider that type of content kind of somewhat interesting, stick around. There'll be more. If not, thank you for listening through the entire video. I wish you well, and thank you for letting me bend your ear for a bit. Ciao.